Gotcha. We're gonna fix that. We'll make you, we're real confident. We like that. All right, wonderful. Welcome. And then Colleen, you want to tell us? Colleen's out there in virtual land.
Sure. I've been here for about a year, and I have my first listing appointment tomorrow. So I was hoping I get some information so I can provide it to my seller.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully you're going to have plenty of information for that. So, so three things. I want to make sure. Number one, you have, well, let me step back. Most agents struggle with two things. One is what to say, and then who to say it to. And who to say it to is a whole separate class about our prospecting and lead generation, right? So this is the other piece. And so whether you're a buyer's agent, whether you're new, whether you've been around, you're an old timer like me, for 25 years, I'm still constantly honing my skills. But I found over the last few years, there's some real simple things that help break this down to make it very, very easy and easy to remember. So, so you're going to not only learn how to do a CMA, you're going to learn some objection handlers. Hey there, welcome. Hi. That's okay. That's okay. I'm Rob. Welcome.
I'm Nicole.
Good to meet you, Nicole. We just went around the room, introduced everyone, and we said, you know, who are you, how long you've been licensed, and what you're looking to get out of class. So far away.
Great. So I Nicole again, and I started with KW 4 years ago, but then I left to be with my little ones, and I'm back this of December.
Excellent.
And I've done a little CMA, but I've been working on a couple for some potential clients, so hoping to get a little bit more understanding.
Excellent. And I say, and Colleen, you said the volume's still okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Is it any better or worse? Like, is the microphone picking everything up okay?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
I tend to be loud, so so let me just to recap again. What we're looking to do today is three things. Number one, I want you to be comfortable with what to say. And the information, again, we've broken it down, it's pretty simple. So number two, not only are you going to have the ability to price a property, which is key. Secondly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the seller net sheet. So many times agents fall short. How many times you've been at a listing appointment and the seller goes, what are we going to walk away with? So right off the top of my head, shooting from the hip, I would say somewhere around 7%-ish is probably safe. But we're going to go through that seller net sheet, so they're going to know almost within a few $100s of what they're going to walk away with. Also going to have some objection handlers. So again, obviously price is probably the single biggest issue people struggle with. And so I'm going to give you a few of those objection handlers so again, you know what to say when those price objections come up. Now then we're going to jump right into it. So first thing I like to break it down is when we're doing a CMA, and of course that stands for what? Comparative market analysis, right? This is the bread and butter of what we do. This makes us, again, over Zillow and Truly and all those other wonderful websites, nobody can get that right yet. When they invent an algorithm that can do this, I'm going to buy it. And everybody here who thinks right now we're in a seller's market, right? So right now we're in, my estimation, the 6th year of what's normally a 3-year cycle. I've been telling my clients for the last 2 years, the market's going to shift. The market's going to shift. I feel like Chicken Little. The market's going to shift. And they're like, yeah, well, you've been telling us that for the last 2 years. Okay, we're still waiting. Gary Keller just came out this week and said, or last week, at family reunion, that based on his data, and so I've had to change my presentation. So again, I'm still learning. You can teach an old dog new tricks. You know, Gary came out and said that based on the data that he's seeing, that we're going to be looking at an 18-year lag in inventory. And yes, I said the same thing. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, and it's hard for me to process because I've been doing this for 25 years. I remember vividly the crash in 08, and about a year and a half before 08, it was a similar market, you know, seller's market, over asking price offers, not quite as frenzied as this. But again, similar seller's market. And in June of 06, inventory jumped 30% in 1 month. So by August, we had sellers going, hey, it's still a seller's market, right? And I'm like, kind of missed it. So, and then of course the crash happened in 08. So I've been forecasting, if you look what happened to gas prices the last year, anybody, they haven't gone down, right? So usually what happens to combat inflation, what does the Fed do? They start raising rates. Now we've been addicted to low rates for probably better part of 10 years now. They just jumped last month from about 3 to about 4% now and creeping up. And again, I was saying last year, my mortgage people were telling me the same thing. We're probably going to see it go up to about 4.5 easily by spring, maybe 5 by summer. So we're on our way. So as those interest rates go up, logically, what do we think might happen? Maybe sellers start getting a little nervous. Geez, maybe we better jump on the bandwagon now before the seller's market goes away. Maybe create a little, I don't want to say a panic, but an adjustment. People start putting homes in the market. When supply goes up, what happens to price? So that's why I've been telling my people for years that the shift is coming. Now, according to Gary, and this is, I was talking to my coach the other day, in my brain, this is the only way I could get my brain around 18-year lag. There's nothing in American history that lasted 18 years, right? And I think it may not be as frenzied as we're seeing now, but the logic is we have builders who can't build fast enough, can't find enough lots to build. You've got some young kids, unfortunately, who are still living in their parents' basement because they have, student loan debt. So you have that pent up demand. They're trying to get out in the first time home buyer programs. And now you've got, people again, consistently graduating who want to get in the home market too. So my brain, how I think of it is, let's say we have 20 million buyers right now, nationwide. And let's say we've got 10 million homes, right? So we're literally at a 50% deficit. So let's say inventory spikes like we just talked about. Let's say we have a little mini panic and it goes up to 15 million homes for sale. We're still at a 5 million deficit, right? So again, that's the only way I can get in my brain around it is even if inventory jumps by 50%, we're still going to be at a shortage. So it's important to know this because why this ties into CMA is it's very important to try and get recent comparables. When I say recent, I mean the last 3 to 6 months, okay? Now, out here in a rural area, we'll talk about this too in detail. In a rural area, I used to be able to go back. The appraisers typically like to go back about 18 months as a maximum, okay? And again, anything that I tell you right now is based on what a good bank appraiser is going to do. Now, before I ask, is anybody here related to or married to an appraiser or an assessor? Okay, cool. Because sometimes I make off-color comments about assessors, so I want to make sure I'm not going to offend anybody. Because everybody got those love letters this year and said, oh, by the way, my assessment just went up $40,000. What do I do? Well, we go fight it. So I'll talk about that too. All right, so starting at the top of the page then, when we start creating a CMA, we're going to look at what I call the 4 S's, okay? So S number 1 is style. You always want to compare the same style. So, and again, we'll get into the exceptions later, but you always want to compare ranch to ranch, colonial to colonial, split level to split level, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, school district. Now, it's funny, I just put an offer in today in a place over in Bloomfield. I love my old alma mater. I was in a gifted program, went to Division University, but it's a small district, okay? Is it fair to say that someone who moves in here from, say, California and says, my son plays football, Canandaigua's got a football team, Bloomfield does not. Victor has a football team. So is it safe to say that maybe there might be a perceived value difference from a small school like Bloomfield or Naples is another one, and Victor, Canandaigua, right? So it's really, really, really important you keep in the same school district. There are very few exceptions to that. That's one of the reasons that I differ from an appraiser, because I have seen where a bank appraiser will come out and they'll do a radius search. So if they can't find a house within so many miles, they simply expand the search. The problem I have with that is, again, if you're looking at Canandaigua versus Bloomfield, and they adjoin each other, they're adjacent, but then you go in and say Canandaigua to Red Jacket, okay, or Canandaigua to Clifton Springs, you're going to have some different values. And don't forget, your school taxes are about 2/3 of your total tax bill. Sometimes there's a big difference between, say, Mid-Lake schools and Canandaigua schools when it comes to your tax bill. So again, if you can, try and keep it in the same school district. Number 3, size. So you're comparing that 2,000 square foot ranch, you want to keep it within about 10%-ish. That's usually the rule. So you don't want to compare a 2,500 square foot ranch to a 1,000 square foot ranch. Too much of an adjustment there, okay? And along with size, we're going to go with age. So kind of do a little subset. So size and age. So size within 10%, age within 5 years in a perfect world. So if you have a house built in 1980, a reasonable comparable criteria would be 75 to 85. Okay. Now, again, you get into rural areas, you get into lakefront property, some of those rules start going out the window. Okay. We'll talk about that in a moment. So along with that, the last thing then, the 4th S is going to be sold. We like to see critically sold properties. Sold property is the critical piece. we like to see sold properties within the last 3 to 6 months. You can go back, I would say, in a rural area, maybe as much as 18 months, okay? Now, again, what's gonna happen? Now, this is easy, in an appreciating market is easy. You go back 18 months, kind of hard to lose, right? The house is worth 180, got a few percentage points, now we're up to 200, you're not gonna lose. When the market does this, and starts going down again, that's where it's gonna become critical, because you're gonna see in a very short period of time, you go back 6 months, when the houses were doing this, and now we're seeing some depreciation or, market changes, it may not be as accurate. So that's the key, is you really wanna make sure you know the market. There's something called absorption rate. And what that means is how many homes are sold at any given time, in any period of time. And so basically what you do is you take the number of houses on the market and divide it by how many months it takes to sell them. Okay, so just for easy math, if you're selling 4 houses a month and there's 12 houses on the market, you've got a 3-month supply, right? 4 goes into 12 how many times? So it's important to know that too. So, and I don't know the stats for Canandaigua, we could look it up. But that's important because, again, they'll also help you again to determine when is that market starting to shift. You start seeing that inventory bump up, and now suddenly we went from having 5 homes for sale in Canandaigua, and now we got 25. What just happened? So we just saw a shift, right? So any questions on that so far? So probably, and we're going to jump in and start doing a CMA here in just a moment. One more thing I want to talk about too is when we get into actually objection handling, we're going to talk a little about the DISC assessment. Everybody remember that? You probably all took that when you came to KW, right? It's DISC. So dominant, we've got our influencers, we've got our steadiness, and the last one's either conscientious or compliant. Typically, and this is again just something to think about, when you're doing your presentation, I like to make sure when I go in there, and I didn't learn this overnight. This has taken me 24 years. I joke about sometimes I'm foolish, it takes me a little longer. But I've been doing this 25 years, so I've honed the skills to a point where it's like, I know what works. And I know going in there, I want to eliminate any objections, just like you're going into battle. I don't want to have anything left to chance. One way to do that is to make sure you kind of identify what personality types you're dealing with. Very typically in a husband and wife team, you might have contrasting personalities. So for example, I'm a high I, if you can imagine being in sales, and I think the I's are about, I think it's 25% of the population, if I remember. I know D's are only like 3 to 5% of the population. Those are your CEOs, the Susan Glenses, if you're here at our answer. So Susan Glenses, the CEOs, the head of industries, they tend to be 3 to 5% of the population. The next most would be, or the next smaller percentage would be the I's. I think it's somewhere between, I think it's 20, 25%. And then you've got your S and your C's, okay? And so I'm an I, my wife is a C. So she's very analytical, spreadsheets and budgets and all that stuff that I can't stand doing. I think the 4th happiest day of my life was when I gave my checkbook to her and said, here, take it. Because, if I'm within $5, we're good. She's going to find that 32 cents if it kills her. So, but when you're dealing with social media and budgeting and things like that, you want to have those type of skill sets, right? So again, going back to our conversation here, it's important to know that, again, and the DISC, and I actually did include a chart. I don't have an electronic version, so for those of you up there, this is what kind of what it looks like. We had these at KW. I didn't pull up the actual site. But again, you can kind of figure out before you go in, or once you're there, once you learn the personalities enough, you'll be able to go, that guy's a D, or, or this guy, maybe the other side, maybe he's an engineer, very analytical, not a risk taker. So it's important to know going in, because you have to tailor your presentation and your pace to those personality types too. So that's something else we'll talk about. So I'm going to jump right in here. I've already logged in. So does anybody have a property in mind that they'd like to do? Let's start with that. You got one?
380 Hillside out.
All right, 380 Hillside. Now, is that an active property or is it?
It's not active.
It's not active. Okay,
It's
good.
like a potential listing.
Perfect.
He
So
thinks he won't get his value, so I want to prove him wrong.
perfect. There you go. Is it a relative, by the way?
That's a good friend of mine.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. Okay, what was that address again?
380 Hillside Ave.
380 Hillside. All right. Oh, side. One of the bummers, I was in a motorcycle wreck about 20 some years ago. So I shattered the right shoulder blade. So I have to do everything left-handed now. So it takes me a little longer. All right, so 380 Hillside, here we go. Okay, and we got Potter or Good Now?
Good enough.
Good enough?
Yeah.
All right.
I can't see that screen that you're.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Oh, all right, let me see. Let me see if I can do it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to call Morgan. Okay. So, let me just see. Because for some weird reason now it's showing it's showing on the other screen here that it paused the share. Oh, here it is. How's that? Does that work, Colleen?
That's perfect. Yep.
Oh my
Thank you.
gosh, I can't believe I figured out technical. That never happens, by the way. We write this date down. I figured out a technical difficulty. All right, I'm proud of myself. Okay, so let me go back there. So here's the real. So that looks like this one. Okay, so it sold 2020. So again, just a little over what, year and a half ago, almost 2 years. 1,700 square feet. So we've got all the data that we need right here. Okay. Now, another little plug too, since it was in the MLS, if you want to go back here, we can certainly go back in the MLS and pull the data as well. So if I just type in 380. So usually what I do, that's the first step, is I'll go in and print out, only because again, I love my paper. I'll print out the previous listing so we can just see what it was. Okay. And the same thing, it'll show, okay, bid it up last time. Okay. Went to, from 190 over to 215. So again, 25,000, not uncommon in this market, as we've seen the last couple of years. Assessed value is still at 150. And again, it gives you a chance to go through this is one thing I always stress: the more information you can get before that listing appointment, the better. There's also something in here called, does everybody use the quick CMA?
Yeah.
Does everybody know what that is? Has anybody used that? Haven't used it. Okay. Also a really, really cool tool. So just off the top of my head, so we're looking at built in 55, we have Rochester City Schools. Now, the other issue here is when you get into city neighborhoods, some folks will search by zip code, some will search by neighborhood. I tend to focus more on the neighborhoods. Okay. So for example, this is Cobb's Hill. So if y'all want to just jot down real quick, the date it sold, but what were our 4 S's? We're looking at what's the style here? Cape Cod. Okay. We've got the year built, 55. We've got 1722 for the square footage, right? And it was sold 2 years ago. So we're going to go back to our search and we're going to see what you guys just learned. Now, the one thing I forgot to mention, we also want to make sure, of course, their solds are most important, right? Because we know somebody actually put in an offer. We also want to consider your pending and you're under contract. And I look at all 3 of these as pretty similar. They're in that limbo period. They haven't closed yet, so we know exactly what they sold for, but we know they got an offer, so we're getting close. And then, of course, our active, which is our competition. Now, I used to say in the old days, if you had 3 active, 3 pending, and let's say 5 or 6 sold, that was a perfect CMA. Somewhere 10 to 15 properties is kind of my preference. It's enough to get a really good sampling. Like all the polls you hear on TV. You want to get a pretty good sampling, right? So in my estimation, if you can get a good 5, 6, 7 counts, so much the better. And notice it auto populates already to 1 year back. Now that's a little bit long, but we're going to use that. So what's the first thing we're going to look for? Go ahead and just shout it out. Which is? Yep, there we go. All right, and now year built, what are we going to do for that?
Within 5 years.
Yep, what was the year built?
55.
Yep, so we're going to start with what?
1960 and 1960.
Yep, exactly right. 1950 to 1960, and I just do a little dash in between. 9. Okay, so 5 years either side. What was the other thing now? What's the other thing that's most important?
Square feet.
Square feet, right. And what was the number? 1722.
Yes.
Now here again, and it's funny because actually there's no secret. My wife does some of these. So and she does an amazing job at it. So because I'm on the road, I'll say, look, just pull this house up. I'll give her the address. She'll do this. She'll plug it in. She was in bank operations, so she could do this in her sleep. Where sometimes she used to get a little hung up was doing exactly 10%. What I would suggest is if it's 1722, I think it was, you can probably go up to just shy of 2,000. Okay, and same thing, a little over 1,400. So give yourself a little bit of a gap. I would do maybe 1,400-ish to say 2,000. Okay, because is it possible you got a place that's 1956? Okay. For a square footage compared to 1722, you're pretty close. All right. So, and especially you get into a rural area, if you get too tight with that 10%, You know, it doesn't have to be exactly 172, you know what I'm saying? So just give yourself a little bit of a gap there. All right, and now the other issue is, what was the one other thing we saw up there was Rochester City Schools, right? So school is important, so we can certainly type in Rochester. All right, and notice what's happening down here. Went from 921 down to 27, right? Now, the last thing is, now this is, and I didn't tell you to do this because school district will automatically normally limit this to what you want. Because it's in Rochester City Schools, and we've got, what, 15 neighborhoods? We probably want to do neighborhood next. I don't know if you remember, that was in Cobb's Hill. Was that right?
Yes.
So if we type in Cobb's, there we go. And let's see if that'll do it for us. Okay, down to 0. So that's not good. So now we got to kind of backtrack and go, okay, so I didn't remember what that was. Did anybody remember what the zip code was there? Offhand?
14610.
Is it?
Yeah.
Let's try that. 14610. Let's see what that does for us. Rochester City Schools. Oop, didn't like that. Where'd it go? 14610. Okay, down to 2. So we usually like to see a little bit more than that. What we may have to do is we may have to go back and do a little bit of radius search. But again, we've got 2 properties that sold in the area. And let's just take a quick peek at these. So this is a great way. So again, how long does this take us? 5 minutes, 2 minutes to put this in? All right. So you've got 2 properties here. Again, let's just take a quick peek. So this one's 1,400, so a little bit smaller. Actually, I sold one right down the street from here on Caroline. So take a look at this. And this is, look at how it started at 145, bid to 200. We've gotten really, really spoiled the last 3-4 years, because I hate to say it's like a dartboard, but if you're even close to the price, it's almost, I tell my folks, it's a jumping off point. So if you start at 145, as you can tell, they bid it up to 200. They probably had a dozen offers in this place, I've already guessed. Delayed negotiations here. So let's take a look at the picture. So first thing I do is, it looks like this roof's in decent shape. You can already see you got a, ridge vent up here, black top driveway. Yeah, it looks like maybe a little older, probably vinyl sided. Decent curb appeal. Now everyone knows what I'm talking about when you look at the roof, right? If you see a roof that looks like alligator skin, meaning the roof's cupped and curled, you're missing shingles, versus this like it's newer. And there's actually, you can even tell if you were to zoom in here, I can't do it, I don't think on this. Yeah, I can't do it on here, but you could even see, I can tell by the rake edge whether or not that's a first layer or second layer. And again, it's not the end of the world. It's important to know for your nervous Nelly buyers are like, geez, how long does the roof have? Well, a home inspector would probably say 10 years. That's what I said. I didn't say it. A home inspector would probably say, real important. You never want to say, I think, or probably, because that can come back to haunt you. Backyard. So this was also, notice the pictures are professionally done. This is something, and again, this is, as a listing agent, this is your call. The 2 services that I offer my folks free of charge are staging and professional pictures, and this is why. You ever seen the pictures where, they're really dark, you can't see anything, or, the dog's, chasing the cat around the back of the house, or, some really, really bad pictures. So it'll be the best $150 you ever spent, because most people now are doing what? They're looking on their phone. And these pictures on a phone, they still come out a little dark. So, but again, notice hardwood floors, wood railing. This has probably been updated at some point. Obviously staged. Now we've got, this is probably 1950s kitchen. This is original. Notice the countertop too, the little metal ridge around the sink. We got some updated appliances, maybe an updated range hood. We just did our kitchen facelift. We had oak cabinets. They were newer than this. Coat of paint and some fresh new brushwood nickel hardware. Totally changed the look of this kitchen. Okay, so, but this is one where pretty astounding. This one for 200 grand with a 1950s kitchen. So that's the market we're in now. They probably have a new floor too. But what I'm doing is I'm going through these pictures. I'm literally going to do this CMA with my people. Okay, so when they see this, I'm going to go through and say, I tell them right up front, as we're looking at these, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you tell me in your mind, I want you to think to yourself, is this the same as my home? A little better or a little worse? You don't have to go through a ton. I usually pick the best 3. But again, just get used to kind of thumbing through the pictures, get a feel for the layout, the light. You know, this one is really, really neat. So it doesn't surprise me, this one. Oh, here we go. The old pink and black tile. Can't forget that from the 50s and 60s. The only one that's really more my favorite is either the powder blue or the pumpkin orange. So great for Halloween. And again, upstairs, you know, you've got the old batten and board look to it. Little paneling. It's all finished basement. Okay, it's a little workout room downstairs. Now it's hard to see too, but believe it or not, these ceilings are higher than some of them. This beam is probably 6 foot right to the bottom of that beam. So the fact you've got floor joists above that's higher than a lot of the older homes typically you would see. Looks nice and dry. So, all right, so let's go back. So I gotta think there's more homes that have sold in this area. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to our criteria and we're just gonna cheat a little bit on this. So let's just go back, see if I can get Cobb's again, because I really like to stick in that neighborhood if I can. Cobb's Hill. And I'm going to get rid of the zip code. And let's see. So we've got Cape Cod. Let's try, just for giggles, I'm going to go back 5 years and see if that makes a difference. Where's my delete? There we go. Nothing. Okay. Now here's the struggle too. Cape Cod versus your Colonial, they're not really interchangeable, and here's why. They're both 2-story. So depending on, and everybody knows the difference when I talk about Cape Cod, right? The roof line comes all the way down to the first floor. Okay, so here's the first floor, here's the roof, here's the first floor, the roof line starts here. Like, see how the front of that was? A Colonial, basically the roof line only comes down to the second floor. It's more typical 4 square, they call it. The reason some people don't like Cape Cods is because they sometimes what they call clipped ceilings, okay, which means you got that slanted ceiling in some of the bedrooms. Not everybody likes that. So another little trick we could have here, because I find it really hard to believe there's not anything in Cobb's Hill. Let's try it. Although the other possibility is, and I just thought of this, it's entirely possible that it was mislabeled previously, that maybe it wasn't in Cobb's Hill. So let's go back. Was it 14610? Let's try that again, and we'll get rid of Cobb's Hill. And let's see what that did for us. I don't know why it's 610. Okay, 42. There we go. So that's actually a little too many. I'm going to cheat this back a bit here. So we still got Cape Cod. Oh, it did too. 610. Remember I mentioned before, walking Bermuda Triangle. Can't forget that. All right. Is that going to stay, please? There we go. Yeah. And now the other thing is to notice the or. The other thing you can plug in here is, for example, if I want 2-story, but I don't necessarily want Colonial, because I have seen agents who will put in their ranch, Colonial, split level. And I just shake my head, because it really is not possible to have all 3. You might have an addition that changes it somewhat. So again, by doing the or for 2-story in Cape Cod, again, just gives you a couple more, okay? So now if we add Colonial, watch what's going to happen. Oh, I only went to 10 now. Actually, that really surprises me. So again, I'm going to leave that off for now, because I want to keep these as close as possible. All right, so we bumped it up another 5 years. So again, from an appraisal standpoint, and again, not to pick on appraisers, an appraiser is kind of like having an open book test. They've already got the answer, right? They know what it sold for. They know they had a dozen offers. So it's kind of like having an open book test. They just have to prove it. Okay, so that's why, again, so these are some of the ways you can tweak it, because again, I really like to see at least 6 properties. So if we wanted to, just for giggles, let's just say we want to map these out and see where they all are. If we map them here. See, map. There we go. Okay, so again, this is what we're looking at. Now, especially when you're dealing with Rochester, like for example, I know, for example, up here in East Irondequoit, this neighborhood up here north of Titus is very different than, let's see this again. North of Titus is very different than over here. Okay, so, and you wouldn't know unless you've actually sold in the area. Same thing over here, Longacre, nice little area north. You get south of 104, drastically changes. So it's important to know these. And again, notice because there's still 14621, right? It's important to know certain pockets like this. So that's why sometimes I like to map it out. Just give me an idea. Say, okay, I know, same thing as you go over here. Where's Sharrington? There's a little neighborhood right over here off of Empire. It's an East Ridge High School. It's this little gem of an area. All these streets are beautiful. Again, very, very different than right down here in North Mountain Village. So again, it's important. I like to map it out. The other thing I usually do, and I'm going to add a few more just so we get a better group here. Let's just say for giggles, I'm going to click Colonial also. So now we've got 10 properties. And again, they're 2-story. You are going to see a difference with a Colonial versus a Cape Cod. And that's why I want to wait for a second. But if we select all of these, watch this line right here. See, we got CMA and quick CMA. This is a great way, and you may decide as a listing agent, some people like to do the 1-step, and a lot of big agents, Jeff Schofield, Marsha Glenn, they'll come in, shoot from the hip and go, boom, 250, 300, whatever it is, okay? As a newer agent, it's going to take time to kind of build those skills so that you kind of almost inherently know where it should be. And even now, hey Rob, even now I still struggle with certain neighborhoods where I'll go in and say, gosh, I think this should be 150, and I go, holy crap, it's 175. So again, I'm still learning certain neighborhoods, but notice what this just did for you. It breaks them down by status. Now there's only one active, there's two pending, and then your solds. So if you were to walk into your friend's house before you even saw it in person, you've seen the pictures online, so you know kind of what it looks like in comparison to these other ones. And now you've got a great average. Here's, the average, minimum, and maximum. And look right here. Average, or the maximum was 137% of asking. This is 114% on average. Again, picture perfect example of a seller's market. This gives you a great snapshot. The other thing you can do, especially if you get an analytical person, and there's always that trade-off, which how much information do I give them versus, you kind of want to tease them a little bit. Don't give them too much, you don't want them going off on their own. But say I had 25 properties under the sold, and then you'll see this in some areas. You go, hey, look, I just a little snapshot for you. Here's just what's kind of sold in the area. And then you say, my job now is to go back and do my homework and hone this down. So it really makes you think that you are doing a lot of work, number one. And number two is there is an analysis involved. So again, it's a nice little snapshot just to walk in, and it gives you some ammunition. So if you didn't know this neighborhood, you can walk in and go, yeah, it looks like, the average sale price of the neighborhood is 114% of asking, and they're selling around 236. Boom. Suddenly you've got credibility, you're like the expert, right? Did this take a lot of time?
No.
Right? And again, you don't have to be a mathematician. Throw out a couple stats. People don't know, and they're going to forget half of what you say anyways. They remember about 10%. So again, if you can just go in and, so I love this. I usually put this out right with me. And again, if you have, especially if you've got 20, 25 potential properties, I was then I'm okay to lead with them. So here's, give them a copy of their tax information, give them a little snapshot of this, and that way when you come back, it's going to set you apart from all the other agents out there. I guarantee it. Okay, so that's the snapshot. So then once we get that done, now as I mentioned, I normally don't like to see too many colonials. And look at this one, Gramercy Park. And this is why. So it's 1,800 square feet, so it's a little bit bigger. Again, your colonial is going to be a little more desirable. The other thing here is you got to keep track of your bedrooms and baths. Now, you may want to jot this down. From an appraisal standpoint, when you look at a 3-bedroom versus a 4, they basically are going to look at them the same way. From an appraisal standpoint, let's say you had a 2,000 square foot ranch. I've seen ranches that big that were 2 bedrooms. I've also seen that big that were 4 bedrooms. So the key to remember is you usually see a big jump when you go from 2 to 3 and then from 4 to 5. Okay. That's again, just an appraisal rule. I don't know the exact percentage, but you usually do see a difference. Now, again, I can tell you from experience, is a 4-bedroom still going to sell quicker or maybe for a little more money than a 3? Yes. But from an appraisal standpoint, they pretty much look at them the same way. All right. So again, this is the other reason I probably wouldn't want to include a colonial, because again, your standard box colonial is extremely popular, probably only beaten by a ranch. Okay. Because a ranch appeals to empty nesters, retirees, first-time home buyers, single parents, and so on. Most of the colonials you'll see, parents with young children, you know, they want to put in one level. Then you start to get to my age, you start thinking, oh, the knees and hips are hurting, maybe I want that first floor master, okay? So just keep that in mind. But this one overall, looks like it's done up pretty well, nice stone pavers out back. Looks like it's some type of ceiling here, and then covered porch, covered patio. So again, this place is a dollhouse. Same thing on the inside. Hardwood floor. You can tell it's been staged. Notice even the number of things on the shelves. I tell people odd numbers, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those are some little things when you're staging to think about. That's a whole separate class. You know, they've got an anchor. So they've got the fireplace and your picture window. All right. So again, here's your focal point. Hardwoods are in nice shape. Lighting actually here is pretty good. I wonder if these were professionally done. Rooms are a little bit small. So again, so anyhow, so we've got, so you get the idea here. So let's go back to, and I'm going to throw only be just for the purposes of getting enough numbers. I want you to see the averages. We're going to go ahead and include this again. Normally, I don't know that I would include this many colonials, because see what it does to the price. See how it bumps it up. In fact, let's go back here and just see what that does again. If we get rid of colonial, it goes from 10 to, oh, down to 3. Okay, 6. There we go. So again, just for the purposes of seeing how the law of averages work, we're going to leave that in for now. But again, remember that we normally try and keep the same style. So 2-story is okay. Cape Cod is okay. We could probably have added in, like, I hate to use contemporary, maybe historic. If that would give us any more. I didn't do anything either. So we're going to leave this for now, as I said. Again, more is better as long as you keep it as an or down here. Okay, if you do and, this is where it starts eliminating. All right. So next thing we did our quick CMA. We've highlighted these. And so now we're going to do what we call our CMA. Now this is kind of the nuts and bolts of it. First thing, now there's a lot of stuff in here. All right. So I don't want you to get too bogged down. The first thing you would normally do is you can go in and set this up as a template so that every time you come in here, it's the same thing. Okay. So, and where that is under pages. So these are, what are all the things that I want to include in my CMA? And there's kind of 2 parts. There's what I call the propaganda, and then there's what I call the actual nuts and bolts. Okay. So notice you can include custom pages here too. With my cursor. There we are. So there's your custom pages. And notice you get the little minus or plus up here. Mm-hmm. So your cover pages. Now this is just my preference. I'm going to show you what I do. You guys can pick. Notice you got a cover page. So it says cover sheet with a photo. So when I auto populate in, it would pull in the old sold property. Okay. So let's see. Now, if I wanted, I could add in cover sheet new. See that it puts it at the bottom. Okay. And then you can simply move it up. So this is my template, but we're not going to use that one for now. It's my favorites. So again, we'll close this one back down. Now we've got your actually subject property or your adjustments. And these are going to be some of these properties over here, or some of these items over here. Your price adjustments, your summary list. Again, these are items that actually have a formula in there, so they plug in numbers for you. Okay. Same thing over here. These are your comparables. Now, some of these are a little mixture. Days on market is going to change. Your minimum and maximums are going to change. So again, these all plug in the actual data, okay, that you have from your comparables. Now the static ones, this is what I was talking about before, the propaganda, these just talk about general real estate rules. And there's certain ones that I like to drive home. Activity versus timing, the effect of overpricing, it's a big one. So again, you can go through and play around with this. There are some standard ones that come up under selected, okay? You kind of have to go through and play with it. Again, going back to what we talked before about the personality types. Some people are gonna be like, just give me the freaking number, I don't care. There's the engineering types are like, yeah, show me the graphs, okay? So again, my guarantee to you, notice over here, pricing, here it is, activity versus timing, okay? The importance of overpricing, sources of buyers, and notice the last 2. And if you have someone who hasn't sold in 30 years, maybe you want to put in where a commission goes. Okay, that breaks down and actually I'll put that one over. Okay, I'll put that at the end. So that tells people, hey, how are you getting paid? but notice sources of buyers, what it takes to show, and finally a map. Now notice the map's the last one. I actually put it up here. You'll see in a minute, it makes more sense. All right, so anyhow, all of these things simply say, what is the stuff that's going to appear in my report at the end? That's all this is for. So we just set this up. So normally when you come in here, it pulls up the screen, all this stuff is already done. So as soon as you get the data, you just got to plug it in. Now this one is where our subject property. Now, I don't remember the MLS number, but we can pull it up from either a tax ID or an MLS number. Did anybody happen to remember the MLS number?
Okay, that's R1297.
Ooh, good job, Jenny. Hold on one second. What is it? R what?
R1297 502.
1297502.
Yeah,
Do you still have that pulled up or do you remember that?
I'm still.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was gonna really be impressed if you memorize that. So there we go. So notice what just happened. It just grabbed that and pulled it right in. So you got the MLS picture. So again, if you had to do a one step, notice how much stuff you have available right at your disposal without taking a picture, without even seeing the house, okay? So it gives you the street name, the suffix or prefix, what zip code it's in, bedrooms and baths, even some little things like, oh, it's got high-speed internet, cable TV, whether you got a full basement or a walkout. So again, you got a lot of data that you can just automatically plug in. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn that off. Sorry about that, folks. I forgot to turn the phone off here. So from here, so we just plugged in our subject property. And if it wasn't listed in the MLS, say it was grandma's house and it hadn't been on the market in 30 years, you could do the same thing. You go back and it actually gives you a spot to plug in just the property address. I'm going to pull it from the tax information. Okay. Does anybody want to see that? You want to go back and see where we did that? Okay. So if we go back to subject and fill from search. See how it says here, subject property. You can do it manually. You can do a cross property search like we just did. I typed in the MLS number. Or we can see it says enter a tax ID, or you can search for a tax record. So I could do the same thing here. I could do 380 Hillside. And now when I fill it, see how it just pulls the tax information? You got 380 Hill Ave, and that was in Rochester. Now we're in Allegheny. So I can do the same thing. I click on the box, fill from selected. Notice the difference, no picture. Everybody see that?
Yeah, why?
So, because it pulled in from the real list tax data, not from the MLS. So I'm gonna go back. Jenny, can you give me that number again?
Okay, that's 1297.
R1297 502.
502, yep.
Got it. Okay, so we're gonna fill that again. So usually when I get to this point, first thing I do, of course, is save. We want to save it for you so you're not going to lose it. Now, without doing anything else, notice we don't have to pick a different, oh, sorry, we don't have to pick a cover. Notice our comparables are already here. Okay, here's the 10 properties we already selected. You've already got them mapped out. The map's already here, and it's already given you some adjustments. I'm sorry, this is, I take that back. This is the adjustment page. What this is for is if you were a bank appraiser. And I tell people this is where you can go in and say, okay, this is a 4-bedroom versus a 3. This has a, here's the square footage difference. Here's some exterior features. Maybe you got a big shed or an outbuilding. Maybe you have a full finished basement. See, it says full, partial. If you have a finished basement, you want to add that in. Exterior, whether it's brick. And then I think one for garage too here. Lot depth, number of fireplaces, garage spaces. So same thing. This is a 4-car garage versus a 2. You could go in and make an adjustment. So for this one, if this has a 1-car garage, you could say, well, this Beresford has a 2-car. I would subtract out $10,000 for a garage. The reason I don't do this is because it's really subjective and it takes a lot of time and it doesn't make it any more accurate. This is where I say, open book test, let the appraiser do this. Okay, so that's why I don't get too much into this because again, it complicates it. And then the other part of this is then you start getting the analytical guy, the engineer, and he's like, well, why did you put 10,000 for a garage? Why not 7,500? Why not 5? And now you're getting bogged down in adjustments. So you want to keep it as simple as possible, but I just want you to show it where it is because how I explain it to people and go, this is what a bank appraiser would do to justify the price.
I was doing that.
I know you were. We're not kidding. Did you really? If we do that consistently?
Yes.
It drives you nuts, right?
Yeah, well, what's putting the number in top?
Yeah, and that's okay, because you know what, it helps you get a better idea of, you know, the difference in, you probably did see a difference where
Yes,
you saw, oh, this one is a two-car garage, right? So that's okay, but I'm just saying, just save yourself motivation to do that. But a lot of agents, and this is very common, especially when we're new, we want to give as much information as we can, right? Sometimes less is better, so that's okay, so, but you see where it is, so yeah, just leave it alone for now, and the next one would be your pricing. Now, again, notice I didn't touch a darn thing, look what I already gave me. And this is your adjusted price, what Jenny was just talking about, if you punched in a bunch of numbers, this is gonna give you an adjusted price, if we adjust it for all those garages, or for the bathrooms, or for the square footage. Again, I don't normally mess with it, I just let the computer do it, and say, look, if you had some rural properties, and you had 40 acres versus 20 acres, okay? A large outbuilding and a riding ring was $100,000 riding ring. The struggle with that again, though, is that building cost me 100 grand. Great, hope you enjoyed it, because the appraiser's gonna give you 10 grand for it. Okay, those sometimes are also the pitfall, and I truly mean that. Even though that building costs 100 grand, and for a horse person or a car nut, that building is worth its weight in gold. But from an appraisal standpoint, they're in the business of selling houses, not outbuildings. So that's gonna have much, much lower value. So the last thing you want, and you don't want to burst their bubble and say, yeah, I hate to tell you, the building's worth 10 grand, but it's okay to say, remember, always blame somebody else if you can. Say the appraiser may not put a lot of value on an outbuilding, okay, especially FHA. Now, we get down here, so notice it says list price, we can plug in a price.
yes.
And I usually do a range. So just for example, without even seeing the place, you could say, you know what? I try and do it in 10% increments. And here's why. Way back when, 100 years ago, when I started, based on time on market and number of showings would determine where your price reduction is. Personally speaking, I always try and do it in 5% increments. So just for easy math, if it's a $200,000 house, if we don't get any showings for the first week, and therefore no offers, we're 10% off according to the market. Notice what I said there, according to the market. The market's telling us, always again, blame the market. So if we're at 200, nobody shows it, and therefore no offers, that means we're about 10% off. That's why I use a 10% range, okay? I also know, and this, you might jot this down too, so I always put my rules after the suggested list price. So let's just say, for giggles, we're gonna say, you know what? We know this house is really sharp. We're gonna say it's somewhere between 220 and 230. Commas in there, make sure I got my punctuation. And there we go. Okay, so there's the price. Now the next thing I'll do is, and feel free to you can feel free to borrow this. I'm gonna say this again. Let me go back to one of my, remember, first rule of public relations, PR, plagiarize and rip off. So let's see, yeah, here's one. This is a while back. So if I go in at CMA and edit, what I'm gonna do is I'm just stealing some verbiage here. So this is a cool thing with savings in this. Copy this. Back. There we go. Okay. So we're back to the CMA. You didn't used to be able to do this, by the way. That was a fairly recent update. So now I'm going to put in my verbiage. Okay. And I'll save it. All right. So when I scroll down here, this is my get out of jail card. And this is going to show up when I print out the CMA in just a second. In fact, I'm going to show you. So I added that in. We're going to finish. And we're going to view. So I know it seems like we covered a lot, but really all we did was we did our search. It automatically plugged in all of our data, and we added in the MLS number and got our subject property, right? That's really all we did. And then I just added this one paragraph. So here's what's cool. So here's our cover page. This is all templated. This will make you guys look like $1 million. You don't need to go into that RPP or RPR or whatever it is. First thing, it says CMA adjustments. It just does a nice side-by-side comparison of all the properties based on status, price, square footage. Notice these are active. So again, there's no sale price. Notice your age, your build, your comments. And I tell people, and I go through just about this fast. I'll say, look, folks, just give you, I tell them up front, we're not going to go through every single page. We're just going to hit the highlights. Okay, make sense? And so the next page could be a little summary page, folks. And here's a summary page, and it says, again, based on status, here's our subject property. You know, here's something else. Here's an active one. That's our competition. Here's what's pending. This is the hybrid. It's kind of in that limbo period. We got an offer, but it hasn't closed yet. And then, of course, here's our most important. Here's our sale price. Here are the ones that have actually closed. And I always stress to people, notice it does give you a cost per square foot. Don't get two things you never want to get caught up in. Number one, write this down, assessment. Assessment is almost never right. It's probably 25% of the time. It is not an indicator of market value. Tell your buyers that up front, tell your buyers' parents that up front. And that's a whole nother conversation about fighting assessors. So number one, assessment has nothing to do with market value. Number two, don't get too caught up in cost per square foot. Notice the difference here. You got a 1,500 square foot house selling for 206. You got an 1,800 square foot house selling for 159. Okay, there's a drastic difference. All of these overall are pretty decent comparables, right? Because we're pretty close to that 1722. None of these are that far off. You know, this one, okay, you know, this is $100 grand off, a little on the lower side. Now look at this, is 1,800 square feet and sold for 167. Okay, so you got to be real careful about getting into the cost per square foot. Again, it's a nice indicator. Here's your map. And again, I tell people, look, here's your subject property. You know, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you see how close this is to your house? And it's kind of the same general area. Minimums and maximums. You know, I tell people right up front, you can probably pull this one out. This is one of the ones you don't have to include. In a perfect world, I would love to see 145 to 165. Makes our life easy, right? You always get a foreclosure. You always get the Mac Daddy Platinum house, so that the numbers are always off. It just gives you a range. As we're scrolling through days on market. Now, remember we talked about the DISC, the ISC? You get those analytical people. So I tell them, guys, this is my favorite graph. And the engineers love this. So now remember, when I started 25 years ago, average time on market was 75 days. Right now, last I checked, I think it was 7. So it's literally 1/10 of what it was. This shows, and this is how I explain it to them. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, look, notice, and I say the same thing. When I started, it was 75 days. Now it's 7. Look at almost everything. There's a few things up to 16. Almost everything's under 10. Perfect example of a seller's market. And then my most favorite graph is this one. Your blue is your asking price. Your red is your sale price. Look at Mr. and Mrs. Seller, way over asking, over asking, at asking, way over, way over. And if I had another 10 properties, this graph's going to continue. This is a perfect example of a seller's market. This drives home the urgency that you want to list now, not in 3 months. In years past, we might see this at certain times, but this has been consistent for at least 3 or 4 years now. So again, drive home the point. You're not going to get any better than this, okay? And the next, again, there's another little summary page, breaks it down by status, pricing recommendations. This is where the rubber meets the road, okay? This is, again, one of the templated pages. So notice you got average, your high, and your low. And this is what I call my get out of jail cards. Remember the price range you put in? Remember the little paragraph I ran over and grabbed? This is your get out of jail card. Current market conditions show sellers experiencing multiple offers many times in a few days at or above asking price when priced properly. You still have properties sitting out there for 3 or 6 months. One of them is mine. So the chalet we've had in the market for over 9 months now. It does make a difference. Obviously, your first-time home buyers under 250 are going to go faster than something over $1 million. Okay, so but keep that in mind. The second sentence here is the market shift is coming. We don't know when, but it's coming. Interest rates are at historical lows. I recommend a 5 to 10% reduction after 2 weeks based on activity. So I'm going to go back to a normal market again. In a normal market, you might only have 3, and I said it right on here. You might only have 3 to 4 showings per week. See what that is right here? So when it was 75 days in the market, you might show it for a month. You're getting 3 or 4 showings per week. That's good activity. And at the end of the month, you go, geez, we haven't had any offers yet. Maybe it's time to drop that price. And if I've had that kind of activity, I'm gonna drop it 5%. Now, if we go, and I wouldn't wait a month anymore, but in the old days, if I waited a month and we had like no showings, 1 or 2 showings, that's the market telling us we're 10% off, okay? National statistics, you may want to jot this down again, in a normal market, homes are gonna sell somewhere around 97 to 98% of asking price, okay? Which you think, gosh, that seems kind of high, right? Even your parents would go, really? We offered 20% off asking. Well, that's not to include that 20%, I'm sorry, it's 97 to 98% of the last asking price. So if you start at 110, it doesn't sell, you drop it to 105, it doesn't sell, you drop it to 100, it sells for 98. The statistic holds true. Everybody follow that? So again, this is your get out of jail card, because what's really going to happen, and it's again kind of a moot point, you put this in here and the goal is it's really a jumping off point. You know, I just listed one today for 170. It's a little ranch out here in Canandaigua. I guarantee you're going to be knocking on 200. You know, you're going to probably, even if we had 5 or 6 offers, I'm still going to be happy. If it sold for 190, I'm not going to try.
Where is it?
Right on Smith Road. So, so again, this is more for your protection in a normal market. Okay, so we follow that, because again, right now, again, we're still not the wild, wild west. This activity versus timing. This just says again, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, look, where are you gonna get most of your offers? Those first 2 to 3 weeks, right? And then as time goes on, what happens to the perceived, or what happens to the activity? Activity goes down, right? Because that pool of buyers like, oh, new on the market. We jump on it, gotta go see it. And then as time goes on, the only difference now is instead of weeks on the market, this is days. By day 5, we're looking at offers. So that's how drastically different the market is now. The pricing pyramid. And Colleen, did I lose you yet? Are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay, cool. I don't want to think I lost you. So, and show of hands, whoever wants to just shout it out. If we have market value, and pick a number, it could be 200, 300, 400, I don't care what the number is, but market value, why do you think we would only get 60% of your potential buyer pool? Anybody think of why? Yep. So if we nailed market value as an agent, we price our house, let's use the number 300 grand. We nailed market value based on our research. Why do you think we might only get 60% of our buyer pool looking at it? Anybody think of why?
Does it make a difference if it's like 299.9 versus 300?
Yes, you're close. Yes, that's part of it. Keep going with that thought.
Because people put in their search
Mm-hmm.
up to like 250 to 300.
Bingo, you get the gold star. Yes, excellent. That's exactly right. So is it possible, and even let's look at subject property, 200, 220, or 220 to 230. Is it possible that people are looking for a lake property, nothing below 300, right? They didn't want, if it's not lake property, it's not over 300, they're not going to look at it. Is it possible, more likely, that a buyer can't qualify for 220, he's going to qualify for 150? They're never going to see this, right? Because that's above their range. And again, most good agents, I usually don't show my people more than 10%. Again, that same rule. So if they're qualified to 200, I might pull to 220 just to get some older listings that maybe have been sitting and haven't sold. Because again, everybody wants that shiny penny, right? They want that brand new house that's pristine like we've been seeing. So usually I don't go much over 10%. So, and that's why. Because even in a perfect world, if we nail market value, we're only going to get about 60% of the potential buyers, because some folks are looking way above, some folks don't qualify. So look what happens if we bump our price 10%. So that means you're going from 200 to 220. What just happened to our buyer pool? Cut in half, right? So what do you want to drive home to sellers is this. When we price this, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we want to make sure the name of the game is to get the most foot traffic, the most eyeballs on it online. That's why we take great pictures, and we want to get the most foot traffic to see your home. If we price it even 10% too high, we're eliminating half your buyer pool. Because at 220, those people that are qualified at 200 might not ever see it. And they certainly won't see it when they're qualified to 190. All right. So that's why. So again, I just use this to drive home again the importance of pricing. Most people are going to get that. Okay. Any question on that so far? And then source of buyers. Again, this is really more for a seller who maybe hasn't sold in 30 years. And they think, oh, can you put it in the newspaper? Are you going to do this? Are you going to put the clown juggling on the roof? And no, that doesn't really help you sell your home. Where do most of our buyers come from? Our online websites. And I explain, I make it a point when I teach my first time home buyer class, I make it a point to talk about the hierarchy of websites. I know we're not supposed to pick on Zillow because they're technically a real estate company, but they were a marketing firm. So, and they're still not that great. So let's start with the GRAR, Greater Rochester Association of Realtors. That is our main site, right? So as a buyer, I tell them, you're going to get a search from us as an agent, and we're going to, based on anything sold in the real estate computer, the real estate database. The next hierarchy is going to be your branded sites. So whether it's Hunt or Remax or Keller Williams or so on, that's the next level. And I tell people, look, it's really just a picture frame. We frame it in with RobOpett.com, and it looks like I have 1,000 listings, but it's really just a whole MLS. And everybody does it. It's just a kind of a tactic to keep you on our site, right? And then the next level is going to be your national sites like Realtor.com or Sendit. And finally, you get down to Movado and Redfin and Zillow and Trulia and all those other sites that basically pirate our data, right? And once they pirate it, we can't control it once it goes out there. So that just says, again, most of our tools that we use are going to be focused around the online marketing. Maybe we get into Facebook, maybe we get into some mobile apps. You know, the yard sign, yeah, there's still a percentage you'll get, but notice how low some of these other ones are, okay? So again, this helps get you out of spending money on pricey print advertising, television shows, or whatever else the case may be. And again, remember, if you remember the steps to positive showing, that was one of those things, the template just drops in. This is all just templated stuff. I didn't create any of this. You know, first impressions, cleanliness counts. You know, sometimes I love my pets, but have I walked into houses and I smell that litter box when I open the door? So, and you know, and I've had to tell people, somebody said, hey, look, I've got dogs too. I did notice a little bit of a pet odor when I walked in. You may want to move those litter boxes down in the basement, or they want to get some of those crystals that they use, whatever, you know, whatever suggestion. So, but use this as your way to politely remind them that sights and smells make a big difference. Scheduling the showings, again, you don't want to be there. Timing. I tell people, look, it's going to be shown about 10 to 15 times a day for the first 5 days. Hopefully then you're done. Especially if you got tenants in there and the tenants get a little crabby with you. Well, geez, you know, we need 24 hours. No, you don't. It's not in your lease. But you want to tell them, look, we want to create as little inconvenience as possible. So we're going to set some times for you, Mr. Tenant, Mrs. Tenant, so that this makes sense. How about 10 to 2 and then maybe 4 to 8? How does that work for you? Okay, try and get some agreement there because we want to get as many showings as possible. And then, and if you remember I dropped in that last box where the commission goes. This might be, again, for a person maybe hasn't sold in a few years, and you say, hey, look, you know, just so you realize, I'm not getting that whole 6%. You know, I know I'm driving a Prius and you think I'm rich, but you know, it's really because my greedy broker takes this big piece, you know, so you can kind of make a joke about it and say, all right, but again, it's important to know that, you know, we split it up, and and I show them right on the printout. I say, see the 3%, you know, right on the top of the page. I say, look, this is where we're co-broking. So that 6%, half goes out to the company that hopefully is going to bring in the buyer. And we might only get, I tell them, you know, once in a while I get lucky, maybe 10, 15% of the time I sell my own listing and the whole piece stays in-house. But most of the time we're depending on, remember, that auction, that co-broker to sell your home. Because who can sell it better, 1 or 2,800? And people, so again, drive that home. And again, you don't have to use this. This is just simply one of those extras, all right? Any questions with that so far? I know I hit you a lot of stuff. So again, let's just go back. So as we're setting up the CMA, that last page, see where it says commission goes? Oh shoot. Really didn't want that. There we go. So if I click on, here we are, static. All the way down at the bottom, see where it says what it takes to show where a commission goes. Okay. So again, you can customize this, but this is some of the basics that come up. And if you get stuck on, just call me. I can walk you through it. But that really is the CMA piece. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I do have a property that I'm working on.
Yep.
It's like 1961 around there, but they just recently updated the full kitchen,
Yep.
and the downstairs. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time with comparing that.
Okay, gotcha. So let's do this. We're going to back up for a moment because what I do is, by the way, so when I'm doing a listing presentation, you know, there's always, you may want to jot this down too, because this is important before you get into the CMA. I always ask 3 questions, and yes, it's in the Keller Williams handbook, and I still use it. Susan, this is when I came over 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I wasn't doing this. And Susan asked me about it. I said, no, I really like that. It's before I read all the Keller Williams info. Question number one is, and I look at the sellers, and especially if it's a married, I'm gonna use a married couple because most of the time it's a married couple. And say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, just like on your wedding day, your birthday, this is all about you. So tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best, what's gonna make this selling process for you a 10 out of 10? And they might say, oh, I want to get the most money, I want stress-free, I don't want anything unexpected, I'm not, okay? So they'll say, okay, great. So, and it can be different for both of them. I always make sure that's okay. Because again, remember, personality differences, husband and wife might be very different. You know, wife wants no stress, husband wants most money or whatever. Now, second question, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, on that same scale, 10 being the best, what's going to make this a 10 plus experience? What's going to make it even better? And usually then, and you'd be surprised, you may have to wait, that uncomfortable silence, people go, Usually at the first question, they go, nobody's ever asked me that. But they'll say, okay, let's say they want the most money. Excuse me, and they'll say, okay, what's going to make it a 10 plus experience? And they'll go, well, maybe since we're building, maybe if we could stay here after closing, that's called a rent. And I said, great, that's called a rent back. We can probably do that because did you know in today's market, buyers are so happy just to get a darn house, they might use that to sweeten the deal. Instead of, they skip the home inspection maybe they'll give you a free rent back for a couple of weeks or a month. By the way, the longest I've seen is 2 months for free on a $300,000 house. So that's something else. So then finally, the last question is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, gosh, so if we get you the most money and we get a rent back for you, what's going to make it even better? What's going to make this so good? You're going to invite me back for Thanksgiving dinner. What's going to make it a 15 out of 10? And he's like, oh, no, we were asking, or something like that. Now be careful because I asked this to one customer, and I'll never forget. So when I asked, so what's going to make this a 10 plus experience, or what's going to make it a 15 out of 10? The husband looks at me and goes, strippers. And the wife just shook her head, of course, So it was like, but just be prepared, you get some wiseacres out there. But again, the idea is, you're building rapport and you're focusing on them. You want them, again, because it is truly about them. So, so that's what I start with before I ever get into the CMA and have this discussion, okay? And of course, you hopefully have already found out about what some of your updates are, and some of the things that they've done recently. And you asked about the septic tank, because how often has that been pumped, and all those good things. There's a whole list of questions. That's a whole separate listing presentation. But once I've done that, and once I've seen the house, before I get into the pricing, and how we just went through and I hit click finish, you guys can see the whole CMA. Before I do that, because I give them the printed version, say, look, this is yours to keep. It's going to include everything we just talked about today, except for this. And this is when I click on the comparables. And I usually pull out my laptop and let them do it, okay? And say, look, so I would say, notice here are all the properties that we're using to compare yours. And so let's just take a look at our competition. And I literally let them do it. I give them the mouse and say, if you click on the big picture here, so this one's on the market for $299. Now, as I said, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, as you look at this in your mind, compare it. What do you think is good? Is this home similar to yours? Is it a little better, a little worse? And I usually, again, have in my brain the 2 or 3 that I really like, okay? So, and again, as they're clicking through, they're like, oh yeah, it's got the Tudor front, 2-car garage, nice curb appeal, nice backyard. Let's see here. So let's see, we've got, nice hardwood floors. This one's vacant. All the rooms look the same when they're vacant. Nothing on the shelves. Here we go, kitchen. Nice white kitchen, stainless steel appliances, okay? So, again, they're like, oh yeah, our kitchen has been updated in 20 years. This is actually a little bit nicer, okay? So then same thing, we go, all right, so let's go back. Single line. So this was on the market for $300,000, but let's just say, what, I know that's a little high. Let's go back. I know this one here at 55 is really a good comparable, okay? So same thing. I'll say, all right, geez, what do you think about this one? Notice, and I point out immediately, notice this one bid $26,000 over asking price, was on the market a grand total of 3 days. And most people, because that's the other thing, when you say to people, or people say to you, oh, geez, a 10 out of 10 experience for me if it's sold quick. Great, what's quick to you? Yeah, a couple months, really? Well, would it shock you to know that most homes are selling in less than 7 days right now, or on average 7 days? And then you show them, okay, right? Picture's worth 1,000 words. And then now they look at the pictures and go, gosh, yeah, this has been on the market 3 days. Oh, look at these hardwoods. Wow, look at the paint job. Okay, oh, look at the kitchen. So again, in their brain, you're already creating your argument for that, okay? So in other words, when they get to the actual pricing piece, hopefully, if you show them the right comparables, the price isn't a shock. Does that make sense? All right, so, and I'm sorry, what's your first name again?
Nicole.
Nicole, that's right. So you said you had one you wanted to see? You had some comparables?
Yeah.
Okay, let me back up here. You guys pretty good with this so far? We're gonna jump into another real world example here. Okay, go ahead. What's the property?
It's 1240 Westview. You put that in, it should be the only thing that pops up.
Gotcha. Is it active?
Yeah, no, it's,
So?
it's a possible listing.
1230 Westview?
40, sorry.
1240? And is it west and then view?
Westview is one word, sorry.
That's okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's an expired listing now. This is usually a dead giveaway. This wasn't one of your own listings, was it? Somebody else?
No,
Okay.
and actually, this was a while ago, it expired. I think.
Oh, yeah, okay, 2013. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
so we got 10 years. All right. Because sometimes if you know it just expired a month ago, and there's an old rule. One of my buddies over at North years ago, my buddy Bill, he had a saying, you want to be the first son, the second wife, and the third realtor. Because they all get the lion's share, right? Right. So again, if you see and you go into history, everybody knows where you can find the history, right? The little clock right here, and you go back in time and see how it shows how many times it's been on the market. I think it goes back 15 or 20 years. If you see it's been on the market with 4 different realtors in the last year and it's the same price, number one, you need to be shaking your head to yourself, because again, a good agent is never going to take an expired listing at the same price. You have to go for a minimum of 5% reduction. Always, always, always. So jot that one down. If you're taking an expired listing, when I mean expired, not 10 years ago, okay, that's okay. Within the last 6 months, you do not want to take it at the same price unless there's something major been done to it. Okay?
Right, okay.
Another little caveat, 2 rules. Number one, you either add value or reduce the price. Those are your choices. Most people want to reduce the price. You want to put in a $50,000 kitchen, or do you want to drop the price? You want to put in that $40,000 permanent boat dock, you want to reduce the price. Okay, so Westview. So let's take a peek real quick. So this,
They're all old photos.
yep, they're all same siding.
The siding, I believe, is the same. They have a lot of new doors and
Okay.
windows.
Okay,
Kitchen's totally different.
kitchen, good.
And it's actually opened up to the living room.
Oh, nice. Okay,
Yeah.
hardwood still look pretty good.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is cute.
There might even be some new flooring.
New flooring. Okay. Yeah,
That
finished.
whole downstairs is all redone.
That's all we're done too. No more tile.
I don't believe there's tile.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, overall, it still looks pretty cute. Nice big backyard.
Their backyard. Even.
Now, here's the other piece. And again, you got to sometimes be a little tactful with how you talk to people about this, because a raised ranch, it seems to me, in my experience, it seems like people either love them or hate them.
It's a split level. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point. A raised ranch, by definition, is this. See how it's cantilevered out? Now, a split level, because many times people use them interchangeably, there is a little difference.
Okay.
So notice when you walk in the entrance. On a raised ranch, you walk into a foyer. Okay, you know, you don't walk into living space. You either have to go up or down, right?
That's how it is.
Yep. So in a true split level, you usually enter on like the living room level, and then you go up to the bedrooms and then down to like a family room. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest difference. So the reason I bring this up, some people will say they don't like split levels and they're talking about a raised ranch. Okay, so especially, so that's why I say it's really important. There is a big difference. Split levels, I call the Brady Bunch houses, side to side. Usually you see them a little side to side split. They're similar, but many times there is a difference. So, all right, so this one, so just so we have it memorized, so 1,700 square feet, 1962 square footage, Pelmac, half an acre. All right, that's good. So let's go back. Let's do our search again. Okay, so right off the top, we're gonna get all our statuses. We're gonna go for school district, which is Pelmac. There it goes, auto populates. And what was that year built again?
19.
62?
Yeah.
So I'm even gonna do 10 years because again, I know it's in a rural area and I know we're gonna need that extra. Now remember, perfect. If we were looking in Penfield, Webster, Fairport, Pittsford, the 5-year rule applies. As soon as we get into the rural areas, you want to expand it out a little more. And it's 1972. Now again, am I excited about the fact there's a 20-year swing? No, but to get enough decent comparables, you're gonna want to at least get a little better smattering
I
here.
think I even did when we were.
Did you? Okay.
I don't know, that's why I'm here.
No, that's okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. Again, whatever you're doing is fine. We just want to add to that base. That's all. And then square footage, remember what that was?
1762.
All right, cool. So same thing. I'm going to do probably, let's do 1450 to, let's try 1950. Again, roughly 10% either side. Okay. What do we got? We're down to 6. So again, that's not too bad, right? Remember before we said perfect was about 10, 12, 1 pending and all sold. Okay, so remember, what's the first thing we do is that quick CMA, right? Select them all, quick CMA. So did you get this far yet? Did you try
I
this
didn't do
all?
a quick.
Okay,
scan.
good. So what do we come out with? We came out to right now 1 pending. So of our sold properties, we've got, was it 112% of asking price? Our average is 180. Our minimum is 151. Our high is 200. That's actually a pretty good range. You know, I've seen, like I said, to me, I love a $50,000 range. 25%, that really isn't bad. So you almost can't go wrong. Did you talk to the seller? Did they have an idea of what they wanted? Did you get that far in the conversation?
No. And.
Okay. So yeah, I'd say right now. So then we go back to,
I know they put a lot of money into it, so I just know that this conversation is gonna be her wanting to know how much she can
yes,
get back of that.
the one other piece of information, which is going to springboard into this,
Mhm.
is if you can, and be early in the conversation. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, yes, I look forward to seeing you guys on the 24th. Do you happen to know offhand, what is your mortgage balance? Say it just like that. And they'll say, oh yeah, it's, I don't know, 100,000. The reason being is, and I said, is that only the mortgage or is there a home equity? Oh, no, we got a $10,000 home equity line of credit also. The reason is when you do your net sheet, you want that piece of information, okay? Because it helps you combat what you just said. Oh, we got 50 grand in repairs. Okay, great. Now, can I ask you, did you really spend $50,000 with a contractor or was that just your materials? Well, no, we figure it's worth about 50. We only spent 20 grand because my dad did all the work. See what I'm getting at? Really hone in on what they've got into it. Get as specific as you can. But again, so make sure you ask if you can what they have for the actual mortgage amount. So the next thing, anybody question that so far? Does that help a little bit, Nicole?
Yeah.
Does that narrow down a little more? I think you've really got a good search. If you use that, if you go through, you've got 3 or 4. Now we did go back a year, which again, remember, I think is okay. In a rural area, I think you're fine. I'd probably go back any more than that. Remember, in a perfect world, we like it in the last 90 days. And if you get into the bigger suburbs, again, Greece, Pittsford, Penfield, you're not going to want to go back 365 days. You want to go back, 90, 120, 150 maybe. So let's go back to financing. Let's see what I got for net sheets. Let me find one here.
Did we put in a style of home when we did that?
No, you know what? Good point. I did forget that. Yes. So let's go back and let's do, we want a raised ranch. Oh, now we're down to 1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder if we're gonna.
So let's see. So let's see, this one shows us. Is that the sub? That's one on Stafford, listed for 140. Now, right away, you can see some differences. No garages. This garage is underneath. Square footage really is going to be a little bit smaller because they're including the lower level. Now, again, see how the carpet's all wrinkled.
Mhm.
So let's go back. Yeah, kitchen's older. All right, let's go back and see before we put in the raised ranch. Because you're absolutely correct. Now let's look at some of these other ones. We had 6. So we've got, so this one's a regular, it's really more of a ranch with a high peak. What's he calling it? Yeah, see here again, they're calling it a Cape Cod or ranch. A true Cape Cod has an upstairs that is finishable. you could build a Cape Cod and not finish the upstairs. A lot of people do that, keep their assessment low.
Mhm.
And so this is really, when you look at this picture, this one could call a Cape Cod or a ranch. It could be a ranch with a high peak ceiling. If you put a couple dormers in here and finish off the upstairs, probably for a kid's bedroom, because you're gonna have a head knocker, other than right down the middle of that peak, you're gonna be bumping your head on the roof. So this could be called a Cape Cod. So again, I probably wouldn't use this as a comparable to a raised ranch. I mean, if you had to and you got nothing else, what I would say is, typically you will see a Cape Cod or Colonial sell for a little more than a raised ranch, because it has, if you think about it, a raised ranch has basically 2 levels versus a Cape Cod or a Colonial really has 3, right? You have a basement and then the 2 upper levels. Okay, so you've really got more usable space, and that's why typically they go for more. Same thing, a ranch. Your ranch to build is your most expensive style because it's the biggest. You have the biggest footprint. Basements are expensive, you know, whether you're pouring or using a mason. So again, a ranch probably would not be a good comparable on this. That's why some of these were higher. Let's see. Same thing, another ranch here. And this is, you know, actually this is interesting. So this is a little more of a contemporary. This, you might get away with this. You know, this one sold for 180. Let's go back just for giggles. Let me just see if we can go back in time. Only because I really, really like to see more raised ranches. I'm gonna go back 2 years, because I can tell you in the last 2 years, it's only gone up. Let's see, so we got 12. Yeah, we're still down to 1. So like, you know, you mentioned before, remember I said before, I'm not crazy about split level or using the term split level, but let's try split level, or it only gave us 1. So yeah, you do get a challenge. All right, I like this. So let's try a 2-story, because some people will put in 2-story to avoid raised ranches, because they, and there's a certain agent here in town who will use the word bi-level all the time. You see that a lot. So let's see, traditional, transitional, 2-story old style, use other, I suppose. Squeeze anything else? 2-story other. So yeah, we're not coming up with a lot here. So this will be a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, see, so here's a split. So your split is probably your next best choice other than a raised ranch. If you had two styles, again, 2-story is usually same thing years ago. Instead of saying a mobile home, people would put a ranch, even, and especially if it was a ranch on its own land, but it was a mobile home, they would use that just to avoid it. Let's see what this one looks like. And as I said, normally, and this one's a little tired, hardwoods are beat up, but see the difference? So when you enter, your front door is probably over here. You walk into the living room, kitchen, you go up to the bedrooms, you go downstairs to a family room, versus when you walk into a raised ranch, you walk into just a stairway. So there's your kitchen, that's smaller, older. This is probably a foreclosure, if I were to guess. Yeah, it's tired. But certainly helps say, hey, look, on the low end, you know, this place sold for 150. They still overbid by 10 grand. It was only on the market, right? Listed for 140. Yeah, sold for 151 on the market 10 days. So this would still be a good indicator saying, look how, as they're looking at these pictures, say, you know what, a split level similar to a raised ranch, look how rough this place is, it's still overbid. Okay, so it helps you justify your price. Let's see the next one. That's a Cape Cod again. So, you know, again, a true 2-story like a Cape Cod, I wouldn't consider as good a comparable, but you can say, well, similar square footage, it's about 1,600 square feet. You know, oh, the other thing, everybody knows what concessions are, right? So make sure we do point that out and say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, even though it says they got 151, the seller paid $8 grand in concessions. That means they helped the buyer out with their closing costs. So they really only got, what is that? 144, right? That's 11, my math, 143. So it's important to show that, because this one was on the market 10 days. So what else can we change here? Let's see. So this, this would be one, again, and I don't like going into other school districts. However, I know from an appraisal standpoint, if we were to add in, map this out, let me just look at this for a second. Where is this? I mean, you know, you could start to do a radius search. I would not go into Fairport, okay? I might come down here into Port Gibson, which is going to get you into Red Jacket schools down here. I wouldn't go into Victor. You're going to have a higher value, I think. You know, I think your choices are Newark and Red Jacket. Again, Newark really is a different animal, and Newark can put you way out here because something on the edge of Lyons. It's really geographically different. I'm trying to see what else we can do here. You know, this is where it gets a little more subjective. Actually, and this is a good one. So if we just eliminated our styles just for a minute. Oh yeah, that's right. You know what? You're right. Good point. We do raise ranch or that, which we can tweak the year bill. We've already done 10 years. I suppose we could push it out to 15. So let's say it's even, it's going to go 50, maybe just 2 more years will help us a little bit. Sometimes that little bit of tweak will make a difference because again, I don't want to go crazy. 50 to 74. We have a 7. So it gave us 1 more. Let's see, Brook Tree. Okay, well, here's a raised ranch. So there's 1 more. Okay, so you're right there. So that one on Brook Tree. And notice now it's a little tricky. It looks like a colonial sort of. See the small windows down here? This is how you know it's a raised ranch. So this one looks like it's been done pretty nicely. Okay, so this would be a good comparable. So again, you're not going to get a bunch, but I would say to them, look at this place. You know, this is nicely updated, nice hardwoods, nice finish, lower level. It's like newer furnace, maybe pool out back, deck. Above ground pools, by the way, you know, the deck is nice. I don't put a lot of that in above ground pools. In ground pools are more of a capital improvement. So this one, again, recent, fairly recent sale within the last year, sold in 7 days, on the market for 175, sold for 208. That's your comp right there. Does that make sense? So if you think their place is going to be pretty similar to this, and actually, and notice again, square footage is pretty close, right? 17 something. I would say, so what I would probably do if you can't pull up any more comparables, say, look, and just be honest, say, look, I don't have a ton of really comparables because we're in a rural area. I went back 2 years. This is what a bank appraiser would do. So you have to be able to go in there with confidence. Anybody see that movie with Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins? Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin. Anybody see that movie? It was about the bear. It was lost in the wilderness. There's a scene in this movie. Anthony Hopkins is trying to get Alec Baldwin pumped up because they got to kill a grizzly bear with a spear. He's like, "I'll kill the bear, kill the bear." The point is positive thinking. You got to go in there with confidence. So you got to kill the bear. You got to go in and say, "Look, I've only got 1 comparable, but I'm willing to bet dollars of donuts because, oh, by the way, everything's going to sell in less than 2 weeks. If we keep it conservative, I would suggest keeping it under 200. And I would say somewhere between 175 and 95 would be ideal. And you compare it to this one. If you think this house is nicer, you go more towards that 175 range. Okay. Hers is nicer. Okay, then you go closer to that 200. And oh, by the way, when I started again 100 years ago, people used to say, "Well, what is appreciate?" On average, 1, 2, maybe 3 percentage points per year. So if you bought, just for easy math, you bought for 100 grand, next year it's worth 102, next year it's worth 104, next year it's 106. So you got to stay there 3 years just to get back your brokerage fees, right? Last year, it was 1% a month. So literally, this was April of last year. If it listed at 175, again, add on 12%. It's not quite this simple, but just so you know where I'm thinking in this, if we add on, somewhere around 10%, that's going to put us up to close to 200 anyways. Okay, so that 199 is probably safe. If they really push you to 205, I wouldn't pitch it at 205. You're in that range. You follow me? If this house that you're looking at is nicer than this one, all right? At least you have a frame of reference. And I would jot down all these things in the notes, say, yes, yours has a deck, theirs doesn't, or,
It's like
they're
a little bigger.
a little bigger, yeah. So,
But they have a deck and a pool too. It's very comparable.
yes, overall, that's a pretty good one, right?
Mhm.
So did everybody get that? So we had to tweak it a little bit. You don't necessarily want to go crazy, but again, overall, I think again, for a couple of years, I don't think any appraiser on the planet would have a problem with this. All right, last thing, how was everybody doing on time? Anybody need a break or anything? Okay, cool. So last thing, real quick, I just want to show you a seller net sheet. I promise you that. Let's get out of here. So I'm going to show one of my past. It's here, it's an old one. Old CMA. Okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. So let's try this one. So what I did is you're going to do what they call a seller net sheet. So literally, we just pull in. Everybody knows how they can create a contact in here. You've done that with your buyers, right? That's how you create a buyer or seller file. So literally, where you find it is you go up under finance. You just literally click seller net sheet. Okay, it literally pulls up this, and it's blank. And what you do is then you go in and select. See all you've got all these people here. So you just select whoever your client is and plug them in. And then you get to plug in all of your 3 prices, okay? Notice the mortgage payoff. Remember I said about that? The first thing you want to get is your mortgage payoff. Now, if you had a mortgage of 208 plus you had another $10,000 home equity, you would plug that in here too. Give you a total. And let's see if I can remember all these. So we've got garbage fees, a recording fee. We've got your taxes. We've got down below, we're going to have survey, attorney, transfer tax at 0.4%. Did I miss anything? I've done this once or twice. So eventually this will become second nature for you. But what I stress is, so as we're going down the list, you got your 3 prices. And in this market, if you think, now, for example, the one we just did for you, you might go 190, 200, 210, give them a little something to think about. You might even want to go 220, give pie in the sky, okay, especially if you're competing with another agent. So we got 3 prices. We have our mortgage payoff. I always throw in a couple garbage fees, and here's what I tell people. I always want to under promise and over deliver, not the opposite, okay? So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I've included some extra fees in here. So you're going to be pleasantly surprised at closing. So number 1, recording fee. Most recording fees are going to be $10, $15. Your annual taxes. Now that's the true taxes. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. Your annual taxes, it says months to escrow, meaning how much are you putting into escrow? Well, we're not really escrowing it. What we're doing is we're going to get a credit back. Okay. So depending on what time of year you close, your property taxes are due in January, right? Pay those in January. September are your school taxes. So if you just think of it this way, almost no matter what time of year, you're going to have used up about half your taxes, right? Does that make sense? So I've hedged our bets. I'm not giving them a full 6 months. I'm only giving them a credit for a little less than 6 months, right? So that's why I put in months to escrow. How much of a credit are you going to get back from that escrow account? Okay, that's a reimbursement. It's a credit. So I put in a negative amount, so -5 months. So this means at closing, they're going to, and actually it might be after closing because they have to mail the escrow check back to you. But basically they're going to get back about $3,500 if the total tax is $3,600. So that's the only thing that's a little not really user friendly. You got to just remember that, okay? Again, it's a credit back in your taxes. It's a little less than 6 months. So you put in a negative number here, put in -5. Okay, because that will be blank. Does everybody follow that? You're getting a credit back on your taxes. And that'll be a big one. Inspection fees. Now, if you wanted to, remember we saw that concession, seller paid closing costs? When the market shifts again, because for the most part, you're not seeing very many concessions. But if you want to have that conversation, say, look, the market's getting tough again. We want to do whatever we can to help the buyers out. Buyers typically have great income and good credit, but maybe they're a little short on cash, okay? And they're going to need, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, about 20 grand to close on your house. Figure 10%, $200,000 house, you're going to need around 20 grand to close. Sometimes buyers don't have a lot of cash. So we want to make sure we factor a little bit in that if they come in and say, we'll give you your 200, but we need 10 grand in help. That's where you plug it in. You don't need that right now in this market because almost nobody's getting concessions. But just so you know, that's where you can plug that in.
Where was it, I'm sorry?
Right here, seller paid closing costs
Okay.
under lender costs. But this you will have. Does everybody know what an abstract is? That's your title, that's your history of your property. Back when the Pilgrims landed, they bought from the Native Americans, they sold to Farmer Jones, Farmer Brown. Your abstract is your history of your property. If you lose that document, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, it's gonna cost you about $900 to duplicate that. If you have it, and most people do, especially our C types, right? Remember type C, they're very analytical. My wife, oh, right here. It'll be somewhere around $300, $350 to update it, okay? So again, if you wanna put in 350, that's fine. But I've discovered, I just like going high on numbers. Here's your listing, and I don't spend a lot of time on it. Again, $55 for closing fees. I tell them, no, that might be a courier fee from your attorney. That might be another copy fee or some abstract, something weird that they charge you. So you get another little garbage fee there. Broker's fees, and it's broken down. So look, remember, Mrs. Seller, Mr. Seller, we talked about it's a 6% broker's fee, and it's 3%. Because remember, most of the time we're going to pay that 3% off the selling broker, whoever brings in the buyer. So we keep 3% in-house, we pay out 3%. That's going to be your most expenses. And then the last thing, this is a pull down. You have to click on details. Really standard. Most attorneys are going to charge somewhere between 600 and 700-ish, okay? You also have your survey. Now, survey, small city lot, 4 corners, boom, 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 $500. Thank you very much. If you're out in a rural area like out here and you have 10 acres, if it's an open field, yeah, maybe it's $1,000. If it's wooded and you've got 10 or 15 acres, this could jump to 1,500, $2,000 pretty easily. Okay, so you might want to put in your notes, survey how many acres. Okay. In fact, if you use Rocco Venezia out here, I used to charge one of my clients $1,500 in the village of Manchester. It's like appalling. So keep that in mind though. Again, that's for a very small city or village lot. Any amount of acreage, it can jump pretty quickly to over 1,000. Okay. I've seen $4,000, $5,000 surveys if you got 100 acres. So just keep that in mind. That can be a big number. And then the last one, again, this is one you can punch into your template. If you're doing this as we're going along, yeah, you can save it as a template. But transfer tax, of course, that's a seller expense. It's 0.4% of the purchase price. We got that? Okay, so then what it does, so we click it, save it, and then you view the report. So this is really cool. So when you're done and hopefully getting ready to hand them the pen to sign the listing paperwork, you go, hey, look, so based on these 3 scenarios, if we sold it right at asking price, here's where we're going to, or below asking price, here's where we're going to be, at asking, and if we overbid, here's where we can be, or whatever it breaks down to. And I go right through and explain, here's your mortgage payoff. Remember, here's recording fee. And I say, look, just like this, there's probably going to be 10, 20 bucks. Most recording fees are $10, $15. Here's your reimbursement for your taxes. Here's your abstract and title, another garbage fee, brokerage fees, your attorney fee, and so on. This is also a great way because I don't know about you guys, when I hear someone go, oh yeah, we've got an old family attorney. Joan, is he still in business? Yeah, I think he's working part-time. And I start to have convulsions. I'm like, oh God. Because these attorneys who don't do it full-time or semi-retired, so they say, gosh, I've got 3 great attorneys that I trust. If it's okay, why don't I give you some names? I just know they do a great job. I know it's gonna be done properly. So hopefully you have 3 you can recommend. And then same thing. So at the bottom, I go, so look, so here are your expenses. And the bottom line, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and look, by the way, I've really added in some extra expenses. So you're probably gonna be looking at more like closer to 28,000 at this price, probably more like 37,000 at this price. And if we overbid like I expect them to, you're probably going to be upwards of over 47,000. And literally then ask them, is that about what you were expecting? And most of the time people go, oh, holy crap, I didn't expect that much. So usually that's a positive for them. And hopefully at that point, then you go, gosh, are there any questions, guys? And you go, so when would you like the sign to go up? And that's my, trial close. what do you think? So when do you guys want to get started? However you want to handle it, I hate the old car salesman, what's it gonna take to get your business today? I hate those. So, but I do like you have to close it. So, and usually they'll say, gosh, we really wanted to clean up the basement. Okay, no problem. How long do you think it's gonna take to clean up the basement? Well, the kids got soccer and probably 2 weeks. Okay, great. And you guys saw this recently, whenever we sign the documents, you can post dates. But what we should put on there, you have to put a separate clause under, I think it's page 3. You sign it, date it, and say, it will be entered into the MLS on or before March 15th. Okay, that should get out of jail card, because technically when we sign that, it's gotta go in the system that day. Everybody gets it within 24 hours.
Yeah.
So you have to put in a separate clause that changes the terms of the contract, it's okay, and just says, we're gonna put it in at whatever date they like and post date it. I've done it as short as a week, I've done it as long as 6 months, and put it out there, because say they had a tenant in there and they say, again, and what I tell them is, look, folks, I'm not trying to pin you down and put any undue stress or pressure. However, we have a goal in mind. And if we do it at the end of the month and everybody shoots for that goal, great. If you call me 2 days before and say, the kids got the flu, we just can't get it ready by the 1st, no problem. I'll cross it off, we'll change the date. Okay. But again, it gives you that leverage that you've got now a signed contract. And I tell them, look, now I can send my stager out. Now I can start getting the pictures ready. I can get my lockbox out here. I can call my sign guy, whatever it is. So, all that makes sense?
Yeah, so this is something you do after fixing the CMA.
Yes. Yep. This will be the very last thing that I do once it's in the CMA. Because sometimes what will happen is the toughest is when you look at this and go, yeah, geez, Rob, I love it, but I don't want that price. And then I say, well, let me go through the expenses here for a moment for it. Okay. And that usually softens them up. So when they realize, oh, and this also, by the way, in a tight market, when there isn't a lot of inventory, you got to deal with for sale by owner. And they're like, I don't want to pay your commission. Well, geez, Mr. Seller, Mr. Fizbo, you realize, you're not paying a listing brokerage fee. You're just paying my fee as a buyer's agent. And you realize that now you're walking away with whatever the number is, say it's $27,000. And I asked him, is that what you're expecting to walk away with? No, I wanted to walk away with $36,000. Okay, well, then we have to adjust the purchase price to $260,000. You get that? It takes an objection right away. You get paid. Now, there are those out there who feel like, well, gosh, I gotta get 6%. Okay, you fight that battle. To me, as an agent, if I'm bringing a buyer in, now again, some sellers be kind of crabby, and let's not forget, we have to educate them as well. Will I maybe ask for 4%? Sure, because everything's negotiable. That's up to you. But again, it's a great tool to show them their savings and show that for sale by owner, because people have no idea what they're walking with, right? In most cases. This, and I've had this happen where years ago I had a client, they bought a for sale by owner. We went through this exercise. Before we started, I said, Pat, tell me, what do you need to walk away with to buy your next home? He was buying the neighbor's house. $50,000. I did this, and right out of the gate, at our offering price, he was making $52,000, paying my commission. I said, well, look, see, we talked before, you needed $50,000. Look at this price, you're making $52,000. Couldn't make this up. He still looked at me and goes, I don't want to pay 3%. And I went, well, what does it matter? You're making more than you expected, right? You get more. No, I still, okay, well, how much more do you want to make? And he's, I don't know, threw out a number. So, okay, well, so we adjusted the price. I went back to my buyer and told my buyer that I went through this exercise, that I'm not being greedy, he is. So, but you understand how it takes that objection away. Because suddenly now paying 3% to help you monitor that transaction isn't a big deal. So it's twofold. It puts the seller at ease, and if you're dealing with a for sale by owner, it also helps keep them. Oh shoot, there we go. So let's see. We covered net sheets. We cover the CMA. Colleen, any questions so far? Oh, I got you muted. Sorry.
Sorry about that. No,
That's
thank
right.
you very much.
Sure.
It's great. I appreciate that.
Sure. So, but so that's really all I got, guys. I know I teach you a lot of stuff, but is there anything you want to go back and review? I know it's a ton of stuff. That's why I like this better than the Ignite class, because Ignite has a lot of other stuff that so many could buy down. So, what do you think? Think these things you can all do?
Mhm.
So again, once you do your search, really all it is, and I can pick one of my contacts. to go back to this. I mean, I do this for my buyers all the time. Let's say I've got a client here. I've got them set up on a search. Remember, all you're gonna do is you're just gonna click it. As soon as you click it, you can plug it in either to your quick CMA. Now, the only bummer with the quick CMA is you have to save it as a PDF. It doesn't automatically save it to a client. Or you can plug this right into your regular CMA. And see, here's all your clients. You can drop your client in, okay? And then see all your pages are already stored in here. You did your template. This is where most of you, if you haven't done this yet, I'm pretty sure it gives you a bunch of these things already. I tweaked this a little bit. Most of these are in here. You just might have got to add in, oh, I want to add in this other one about pricing or something. And then remember, we just plug in our subject property. You can either put in your MLS or your tax ID, right? And then you click finish. And both of you guys are listening ones. So for your homework, you guys have to call and tell me how you did in the listening ones. We'll see if this helps. All right, fair enough?
Sorry.
That's right, 3 of you. Oh, you had one too, right? Didn't you say or not?
Potential.
Potential?
Yeah, and actually, I guess I do have a question.
Yeah, shoot.
So, I know that like, Ryan, he wants to make sure that he is able to get, you know, his money back and
Yep.
his own, right, obviously. So I'm not exactly sure how to talk about, like, I know he's got about 160 left on his mortgage.
Okay, yep,
In terms of home equity, I don't
Okay.
exactly understand what that means, what that looks like,
okay.
to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering how to talk about that with him in terms of, because I do have like a CMA that I'm on Courtney Dudek Homes team.
Yeah, sure.
She put together a CMA, you know,
Okay.
for him. So I want to be able to like go over that with him and kind of explain what you were just explaining, going sheet by sheet, being like,
Yep.
you know, obviously you can see that like most of these houses in the CMA have gone over asking price.
Yes,
He said he did his own comps, which
Yeah.
makes me roll my eyes, because I'm like, man, I don't really know how to do this, so how do you know how to do it?
right, because he went to Zillow, yep.
Right, sure, yeah, and so I wanna be able to kind of explain to him that packet in more of a way that is explaining to him like, I know about this than you.
Yes, yes,
So-
absolutely. And here's what I tell people first, throw out Zillow. Because I just had this happen last year. I had a client who wanted to buy a ranch in Brighton. It was adorable, but it was a time warp, circa 1975. It was mint, but you know, avocado green countertops, you know, I'm talking like fuzzy wallpaper, the whole bit. It was mint, and Zillow told them it was worth $255. My clients came in at 205. We didn't get it, and I'm selling for $250. So without seeing the documents, I guess you have to ask him. And so that's what I'd say first. And not that you want to make, you certainly want to make them look bad, but say, look, the problem with Zillow is they use a lot of assessment data, and they were a real estate company for a little while. I don't know if they still are or not. They may not have the same data that I'm using, and they use a lot of assessment data, which isn't accurate. So I'll stress that to them. So what tell them, what I'm showing you is anything sold with any company in the 5-county area. Okay, so this is all the companies here. And ask him, say, this is in Ryan, right? Say, Ryan, in your mind, you say equity, you've got 160 to pay off on your mortgage. In your mind, what's the equity you want to walk away with? Because that's usually the bottom line. Is just say, look, what do you want to walk away with? And then what I would do then is go right back to your CMA. And where's one of them here? Here's a recent one. So literally grab the CMA and say, okay, let's look at some of these comparables. Okay, this is one up in Greece. And you just go down your list, say, okay, because you're gonna have, personally, I'll give them the hard copy version, which has the short list, but you won't have all the pictures. And so you want to get him engaged and say, all right, do you think this one's similar? This is right down, no, this one's at 19 Sneed up in Greece. This one's right down the street. So it's similar colonial. Let's see the inside of it. So Ryan, what do you think? Just, oh, this kitchen's not as nice as yours, right? So, and the bathroom's older. Oh, holy moly, look at that carpet, right? So this place isn't as nice as yours. Now look at this. This is under contract for 209, was on for 2 days. This one's still probably overbid. And I would say to them, just for round numbers, I'll bet they overbid this by 20 or 30 grand. So let's use somewhere around that 230 range, okay? So you got 230 in your mind. Let's go to the next one. This one's pending. Now, same thing. This one's at 279. And I go, okay, oh, this has got some nice hardwoods. It's vacant, nice and clean, neat. You know, it's a little bit dated, but again, overall, it's in pretty decent shape. Maybe they did some new hardware on the cabinets, maybe they freshly painted them. This one's pretty similar. And that was a 270, you know, so let's say it's 280. Now, same thing. This was on the market 24 days. Ding, ding, red flag. More than 2 weeks. We know chances are this probably sold, if I were to guess, 5% off. So just do the math on here. 10% is 27, 5% is around 12 grand. So if I were to guess, this is probably somewhere around that 265 range. Okay, you follow me on that one? And then the next one, now it gets easy because now we have actual sold properties. Next one, a lot of pendings. Here we go. So let's look at this. Okay, look at this one. Listed for 280. Sold for 317. Let's get one a little bit lower. Wow, that one went 100 grand over. Almost at 90 grand over. Was that 80 grand? Let's see. And it depends on where you want to be. So okay, look at this one. Is this house similar to yours? Find a couple that look really close. Let's say he's a landscaping nut. God, you know, this reminds me so much of your house. Look at the hardwood. Look how it's staged. And you find that one that has the price you want to see and say, does this seem like this makes sense? And once he says yes, great. This one sold for 296. You go back to your net sheet now and say, I've got a price here at 300, 280, and 290. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
But if you don't have all of those pieces, meaning some good comps and a net sheet from that, it's hard to talk about equity. But most people, that's what they want is what's my bottom line? Am I walking away with?
Right.
So what do you think, Amy?
I really enjoyed it.
Good, very cool. This is gonna be helpful?
Yes,
Excellent.
absolutely.
Excellent. How about you, Danny? Help?
A lot better than before. So I have more on this.
Yeah, well, you've been doing this long now too. So, you know, once you've done a few of these and you start to go like, we joke about going down the bunny trail, you know, it's like, okay, I went off like you were doing with the adjustments and I've done the same thing. Sometimes I got too caught up in, you know, the acreage. Acreage is another one. You know, it really, it's the house. You can factor in 10 acres versus 5 acres. You know, you kind of do a little bit of a guess, it's a little subjective. Same thing with an updated kitchen. You know, Nicole mentioned that one in the kitchen. All right, so $60,000 kitchen, but at least it'll get you into a range because the cool thing now is you're in the driver's seat regardless. I tell people this is a jumping off point. And once they see all of these places overbidding by substantial amounts, hey guys, look, it almost doesn't matter. Let's get something that's reasonable so we know it's going to appraise and let the market, let that auction bid it up. And then go from there. All right, so that's really it. So it's been what, almost the end of this 2 hours. So a little longer than I thought. But Colleen, any other question before I let you guys go?
Nope, thank you.
All right, well, great to see you. And guys, call me anytime you have any questions. So check it out. All right, sure. Very welcome.
I got a question, but I have nothing to do with what.
Oh, that's okay. All right. Let me just
Okay, your listing,
yes.
that carpet is which form it needs or just carpet?
No, unfortunately not. I wish there was hardwood underneath. I don't think there is. Yeah, I know that's the only bummer. Yes, yeah, there's not hardwood under it.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to my buyer to see what she thinks.
Yeah, it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
And you notice too, unfortunately, there are 2 sheds. Only one of them.
Which one?